Hi, I'm Marty with the Judnich Law Office, and today we're going to talk about some of the changing and existing hunting laws in Montana so that you know what to do and how to be safe when you go out there to try and enjoy conservation and hunting. The first most basic of rules is tags and tag procedures. So a tag is the term we use for your hunting license or permit that allows you to take a specific animal and species. Tags are also specific to a species and area in some regions. There's an over-the-counter tag, which makes it general in certain areas, but there are also a lot of areas in Montana where you have to get a specific tag that you may have to draw via lottery or apply for just to get it. So you need to consult your regs and find out what is the correct species you're going after and make sure you have a correct tag for where you're at. One of the newest changes in tag validating is that when you harvest your animal, you need to validate your tag, which is punch out the date on which you harvested your animal. It used to be the law was that you have to immediately validate that tag, and that has changed. The wording of that has changed. You now have to validate it before you leave the carcass. So if you're going to field dress your animal or take care of it, you have to validate your tag, but not until you're leaving the animal. So the old verbiage of immediately no longer applies. So that gives you a little bit of time if you, in the heat of the moment, forget, or if you need to do what needs to be done to properly take care of the animal first. Where do you put the tag? There's a lot of misconceptions out there that I know I also had a misconception of. The law is you place the tag on the largest portion of the carcass if it's quartered. Otherwise, secure it clearly in a visible manner. So if you're quartering or boning out your animal, then you need to leave it on the largest part of the carcass, whatever that may be. If you're leaving your animal whole, then you can attach it anywhere as long as it's clearly visible. Most of the animals, you have to maintain evidence of sex attached to the carcass. So if you're harvesting bulls, does, calves, what have you, you do need to leave evidence of sex so that if you're checked by a game warden, they can verify what species or what sex your species was. So trespassing and permission to hunt. A lot of problems here in the state of Montana. You must have permission to hunt if it's private. Now, there's also a case that just came down that says on block management or open areas to the public but are technically owned by private landowners, you do need to follow their regulations and requirements. For example, if their requirement is you have to sign in on their book before you are allowed access, then that is what you have to do before you have permission. So don't think just because it's block management that you could go on it and you have permission. You don't until you follow their rules. Like any other private, you need to have express written permission from those landowners to hunt that area. Otherwise, you may be trespassing. If you kill your animal in public or area where you have permission to hunt and your animal goes onto an area of private that you don't have permission, best advice is to go get that permission. Technically, you are still not allowed to go get your animal on private property without permission. That's still trespassing. Let's talk about hunting hours. So legal shooting hours for bow or for gun is half an hour before sunset and a half an hour after sunset. Check your daily tables because it does change daily. Try to make sure you're making an ethical shot and there's enough sun to get your shot where it needs to go. How about hunter orange? During the general season, or rifle season as most of us call it, you need to have 400 square inches of orange above your waist. Now, what's that mean? Well, that means you need to kind of measure out how much do you have showing, and it needs to be exposed and people need to be able to see it. So don't hide it with camo, don't hide it with a backpack. It counts everything from a hat to a face mask to a vest. Just make sure you have 400 inches or more above the waist. Bow hunting season or archery season does not have an orange requirement, so you don't have to wear any during that season. Legal methods of taking or hunting. So what is legal weapon-wise to take an animal? Well, there's a few different things. For a rifle, it can be any caliber. It can be handguns, it can be shotguns. There is a change in the law that now has no restriction on magazines or capacity limit. So you can, for some reason, if you feel like you want a big clip, sticking out of your hunting rifle, you can have that, so there's no more limitations on how many rounds you can have. On a bow, the definition of a bow is it has to shoot an arrow and it has to be hand drawn. So a crossbow does not meet the legal definition of archery equipment. So don't think you can hunt with a crossbow during archery equipment only season. A bow must also be at least 28 inches in length, axle to axle. So you need to make sure that you don't have a super tight past parallel limb bow. Most manufacturers don't make them smaller than that, but be careful because some do. And if you're hunting with something below the required length, that's actually illegal. The max let off is max 80%. Not a lot of manufacturers are going above that, so you should be okay there. There's also arrow rules, which most people don't know. Arrows have to be at least 20 inches long, including the broadhead. So from end to end, it has to be at least 20 inches long and not less than 300 grains with the broadhead included. So you have to have some weight with your arrow. If you're with broadhead included under 300 grains, that's actually an illegal arrow in Montana. Expandable broadheads are legal in Montana. Some states don't allow them, but they're perfectly fine in Montana, so don't worry about that. And one of the best changes in the law, I think, this year was the state of Montana has allowed the use of illuminated nocks during archery season. I believe this helps harvest your animal, find it, make sure you got a good shot on it. So illuminated nocks at the end of your arrow are now legal, so you can use them. The only electronic stuff that is illegal, which is kind of the majority of the other stuff, is no battery-powered devices attached to your bow. So that would include sights, lasers, other things. There's a battery on your bow, that is illegal. So a little bit more about crossbows. Again, not defined as archery equipment, so you cannot use a crossbow during archery equipment only season. It is legal during the general season, or what we call rifle season. Bows are also legal during rifle season. You can kind of use any of the methods of taking during the general season, which is why it's called general season and not rifle season. So if you have a crossbow and you want to use it, you can only use it during the general rifle season. Size requirements for big game. How do you judge an animal? What is legal to take? Well, let's talk about deer. In deer, there's no minimum size requirement on bucks, but males versus females, or bucks versus does, do have definitions that you have to be careful of. A buck male deer is defined with antlers at least 4 inches in length. Anything else is a doe. So if you see a spike with antlers less than 4 inches, that's actually defined as a doe. It's not a buck as far as the legal definition is. As far as elk are concerned, slightly different verbiage. It's brow-tined, spike, and cow elk are the definitions of elk in Montana. Usually they are area specific in your regs for what you can take, so be very, very careful. Antlered or brow-tined elk must have visible branch antlers off the main beam, and the lower half has to be at least 4 inches long. Check out this picture for reference. That's what it's talking about. Has to be off the main beam, at least 4 inches long. So be very careful in judging these animals when you're looking, because most of the areas are going to be brow-tine bulls. So any branch antler on the lower half. Antlerless or cow elk are female with brow-tine antlers with less than 4 inches from the skull, so they are not a brow-tine bull. A spike have antlers that don't branch or if they do branch, it's less than 4 inches. So again, reference the picture. You need to be careful because some tags are for spikes, some are for cows, and some are for bulls, particularly brow-tine bulls. So you need to be really careful about what you're shooting and make sure it's conforming with the tag that you have. What are some of the things you can't do in Montana as far as hunting is concerned? You might be surprised. There is no aerial spotting by craft or drone. So if you think you're gonna spot your animals by airplane, helicopter, now drone, completely illegal, so not a good idea. There's also no artificial light, so there's no spotlighting, there's no flashlights after shooting hours, anything like that that contains artificial light, illegal in Montana. There's no baiting of any kind, so salt, food, anything else. If a warden catches you baiting an animal in, that is illegal for all species in Montana. No electronic game calls. Has to be a natural call. So there are recordings out there for some predators, but as far as big game hunting, you cannot have an electronically recorded cow, deer, anything else you're hunting for big game. You can't have electronically recorded calls come out. It has to be natural, has to be from yourself or somebody else in real life. So there's also no shooting from a roadway, and this gets a little dicey, but you're not allowed to shoot from a roadway when hunting. You have to get a certain amount of distance away from it. Best practice is get off that roadway. Go out and hike a little bit if you're gonna do some hunting. Get off the road. There's also no waste of game. It is illegal to waste game meat. Now, what's that mean? Well, it means any meat that is, quote, suitable for food. That's the definition of waste of game. Usually it's all of the quarters and meat above the hock. So if you harvest all that meat or you bone out your animal, you should be fine. Best practice is if you can take it all out, take it all out. If you can't take it all out, get as much meat as you can. If you follow these rules and regulations, you're gonna have a great hunting season. You're not gonna worry about being concerned or confused about what the laws are. Follow this stuff and go get yourself a great Montana memory. I'm Marty Judnich. If you wanna talk more, give me a call or check us out online. I'm Marty Judnich with the Judnich Law Office. Thanks.